I think that part of the issue is that, whether intentional or not, positioning sort of a game based on its monetary incentives is not as attractive to traditional gamers. Like, again, going back to the traditional gaming world, if you look at a game like Fortnite, that is not marketed as a free to play game, right? That is marketed as a battle royale, first person shooter construction game, because those are the things that gamers care about. They don't care about the how the publisher monetizes the game itself. And so at least on my end, I'm really trying to avoid that kind of language that really references anything around monetization and finances, because while that is important, it is not the driver of why people want to play a game.
Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Zero to Play podcast. I'm your host, Carla Duke, and today I'm joined by BoredElonMusk. Bored is an internet pseudonym celebrity and co-founder of BoredBox, a new business focused on curating the best blockchain games on the market and delivering them straight to the hands of players. Today, we'll be talking about the state of Web3 games, how the space is evolving, the definition of a game in a world where everyone is creating a metaverse, and why they've decided not to create a Discord for the BoredBox community. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Zero to Play podcast. All right, welcome Bored to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me, Carl. It's great to chat with you.
I've been following you for a while on Twitter. I got a really kind of a stronger connection with you when I listened to you on the Not Investment Advice podcast just last week. And really, I didn't realize that you had a background in game development, and learned about BoredBox that you just announced, and all that is very exciting stuff. And that's what led to me wanting to reach out. And I'm so grateful for you being interested in talking on the show. And I know that this is going to bring a lot of value to the community. There's so much exciting things happening at the moment, and I haven't really had a chance to talk about Web3 with someone that I feel like can really navigate the current state of it in like a really well way. And I really loved how you were speaking about it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And I'm definitely part of that community you speak of. I'm a holder of several ASM brains, and as somebody who spent a lot of time as a game player and somebody who's built games as well, I see the value of enriching a world, with smarter NPCs, basically, who are either working alongside you or just, helping kind of operate in the background to create a stronger story. And so I'm very excited to see what the ASM community comes up with, and to see how that actually changes gaming. I think with new technology, you always see game mechanics actually change. And so, 10 to 20 years ago, a lot of the video games that we're playing today were influenced by skins and in-game assets and free-to-play models and auto battling. And so new technology creates new game mechanics. And I think that all this implementation of blockchain is going to do the same thing. So the games we're playing in 5 to 10 years will look pretty different, and hopefully in a positive way from what we're playing today.
Yeah, so I love the idea of BoredBox, because there's definitely like a curation problem, I guess, in the space right now, with so many people trying different things and trying different use cases. It's a very kind of noble challenge to want to jump in there and try and solve for people. So I guess one question I have is, how are you going to manage the curation of blockchain related games where every kind of experience I feel like is different, and there isn't like a common thread, like there aren't really like genres and things like that you can connect to. So what's your kind of plan to manage this curation in this like Wild West that we are in right now?
Yeah, it's looking for a few things. To your point about genre, if you're a big fan of a particular genre, let's just say real-time strategy games or racing games or sports simulation games, you're not necessarily going to love every single game that we pick in our box. The purpose of BoredBox is to expose you to a lot of different types of games and genres, and what we're screening for, if you will, is more so the quality of the game's team, the game itself, the experience that they bring to the table, and also just the speed to market. I think one of the biggest issues right now with a lot of blockchain games is that people are acquiring assets, and they're having to hold them for 2-3 years because game development takes a lot of time. And so we're really going to focus on curating games that are either available today in some capacity, whether it's an alpha or a beta, or games that are launching in 6 months, because the whole point of BoredBox is not to serve people who are looking to flip NFTs and make a profit. It's for people who want to play games and own the assets that they're playing with. And realistically, the market today is not gigantic, right? The number of games that are available that are sort of on chain is really like, you know, a handful or so. But based on what I'm seeing in the marketplace as an investor, as an advisor, and just as a observer of the overall space, I think we're going to have thousands to pick from in a year. And that's why we're building BoredBox today, is to make sure that all that noise can be filtered down so that people who are really busy get some advice on what games they should be paying attention to. And some of the games that we recommend, people will like, and others they might not, and that's okay. If people held on to 2 or 3 of the games that we introduce them to, that's a win for us.
Yeah, one big thread that is very common in the Web3 space is interoperability. And there's a lot of controversy with this when it comes to traditional game development and just the challenges with having interoperable assets and things like that. And I can imagine, and from what I've seen in the space, a lot of these games are created with the bigger vision of interoperability, but that vision isn't really realized yet. It's one of those long 5, 10, 20-year visions that they have. So how do you foresee, because what I kind of like about BoredBox is that it's focused on the experience that exists today. How do you view kind of interoperability and how that fits into the mission behind BoredBox?
Yeah, I think that people are sometimes being a bit too broad in their use and definitions around interoperability. If you look at a game, there are several factors to consider when they're sort of intersecting with other games, but a game in its sort of pure essence is just a set of rules, right? And that set of rules dictates how things operate in the environment of that game, what the goal of the game is, and what you can and cannot do. Those are designed by a game maker and should continue to be designed by them and maintained by them. So different games have different rules, just like the physics on Earth and the physics on Mars are different. You can't just make everything work the same, right? Like a rover on Mars is not going to be built the same way a rover on Earth is. So that part I don't personally think needs to be interoperable. What does present itself as an opportunity is IP, or intellectual property interoperability. So you have this concept for a character, a look and a feel, or even a story, and that can jump from game to game. And we already have that. When you look at games like Super Smash Brothers or Fortnite, there are characters, from other games that don't belong in the game that they are currently in. And for that to work, those characters have to use the rules and operate based on the laws that are set by the game maker. And that's perfectly fine. And I think that's probably the future of interoperability, is this idea that I can take, a fluff and have it play, a role in a racing game, in a platformer game, in a game that somebody else designed, as long as the fluff is able to be sort of inserted into the rules of the game that is being inserted into. But the sort of Ready Player One, idea of like everything kind of syncs perfectly together is not realistic, because we don't live in a world where that is feasible. And it's not a technology problem, it's a human problem. People don't want to bend the rules of their items to fit others, right? Like even just look at the modern Web 2 internet. We have multiple browsers, multiple emails, multiple internet service providers. There's not just one where we all use the same stuff, because there's pros and cons to all of them. So I think with blockchain gaming, it's just going to come down to really sort of aesthetic focused attributes that can move from one place to another. And those things will have to just operate within the rules of the environment they're in.
Definitely. Yeah. Like one big trend, I think, is fully rigged 3D characters. I think that's like one big step that's being made, and who knows what the next iterations of that will be, that kind of projects start adopting and expecting within these projects. So yeah, interesting. One thing I want to touch on is I don't know if it's because of just the timing and the coincidence with kind of VR and Facebook turning into Meta and everything, but I feel like the word metaverse gets thrown around within Web3 just as much as it does within I don't know, every other business now, and the idea of metaverse experiences and like virtual spaces fall into this area that I personally feel like is blurring the lines between what the definition of a game is, and what people are trying to create. I'd love to know how you view the future, because a lot of these companies that are creating games are also thinking about like a metaverse play in the background, like a wider vision. And I'd love to know how you view that. Do you support that? Do you see potential in that, in kind of virtual spaces that aren't necessarily games per se, but they are areas for people to meet and interact with each other?
Yeah, and we've had a couple of attempts at this in the past with things like Second Life, and to some degree, a lot of games that are existing today are places for people to hang out with their friends more so than they are even to play the game. It's fascinating to watch, teenagers or even younger kids hanging out in Roblox and Minecraft and just talking to each other and building. And sometimes there's no purpose. It's really just it's sort of the equivalent of a phone call or a voice chat.
Mhm.
So that will continue, and those kids at that age are already sort of used to this idea of hanging out in a digital space, and for them what is being built by us older people these metaverses is going to just make perfect sense. I think that term in particular works well when you have a large ecosystem of experiences that are all sort of under the same umbrella, and I think ASM is a good example of that. You've got Fluff World, you've got IFA All Stars, you have the Party Bears, and these are all things that sort of are interconnected in a way that you could call that a metaverse. And I do support this idea of a metaverse where you have a sort of a set of IP that are all guided by the same force, or a collective of producers who are all working together. That makes sense. And a metaverse is different than the metaverse, and the only thing that I think is the metaverse is probably our own existence right now. Like that is probably the only thing you could say is the metaverse or a version of it. But yeah, everything else is just kind of an ecosystem of interconnected games and experiences. And again, tying it back to traditional gaming, we have things like that, right? The World of Warcraft and Hearthstone, which is a card game, and Overwatch. Like there are sort of these overlaps. Like that is the sort of Blizzard, Activision metaverse. It's fair to call it that. So I think we'll continue to see that trend, and it doesn't have to be interconnected with every other digital experience out there. It's big enough where people can gravitate towards the experiences and the games that they like within that sort of metaverse, and other metaverses will exist and compete for attention as well.
Yeah, no, I like that view. It's businesses when they have several IP and several kind of like interconnected experiences, they might be in a position to think of a metaverse experience for all of their IP. And I think that will be maybe a trend we start seeing with these businesses at like a higher level, trying to think of how they can build more experiences for their IP. One thing I'd love to get your thoughts on is the play to earn genre. So this is something. So Axie Infinity, I think, is the kind of experience that people point to when it comes to play to earn. There's a lot of questions about that, and I'd love to know your thoughts on the play to earn mechanics, and if you feel like that is something that we're going to see more of, and how much of a chunk of the industry do you think that will capture in the future?
I think it will continue to grow, at least because there is a lot of development in that space. But it will reach a max sort of total addressable market. And I don't personally think that that's over 50 million people. And while that is a large number, it is a tiny number compared to the 3 billion gamers on Earth. I think that part of the issue is that whether intentional or not, positioning sort of a game based on its monetary incentives is not as attractive to traditional gamers. Like again, going back to the traditional gaming world, if you look at a game like Fortnite, that is not marketed as a free to play game, right? That is marketed as a battle royale, first person shooter construction game, because those are the things that gamers care about. They don't care about the how the publisher monetizes the game itself. And so at least on my end, I'm really trying to avoid that kind of language that really references anything around monetization and finances, because while that is important, it is not the driver of why people want to play a game. And if it is, then that's fine. There will be a cohort of people who basically treat a game as a job. And as long as there's money flowing to those people who are doing that work, then that sustains itself. But I'd like to think that the vast majority of people who are interested in playing video games want to just do it for competition, social connectivity, personal accomplishment. Money on top could be an extra incentive, but I don't think that when this industry is mature, there is going to be enough money for the majority of people to be sort of fully driven to participate because of it. It might just be like an extra few, dollars and cents and euro and other forms of currency around the world. But I don't think it's going to be a massive industry where, playing video games all day is going to be your primary source of income.
Yeah, I saw an interesting clip from Brooks Brown recently about if you feel like you can pay rent through the game, then that's what the game is going to become, is a way for you to pay rent. It's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that you're not thinking about having fun anymore. You're just thinking about how to make money, and that's what people do, which is my fear of play to earn mechanics. But it all depends. There's a million ways for games to be designed, and it's fascinating to just see different ways that they can be created. Really interesting thing that I saw on the BoredBox website is that you're not creating a Discord, which was interesting for me, because it kind of it stopped me in my tracks, where I kind of thought, oh, like, it's possible to not have a Discord for a community that's being built. And I'd love to know your thoughts on Discord and just Discord communities in general, and why you've decided not to go down that route with BoredBox.
Yeah, there's an ironic thing that has happened with Discord, in that the tool originally was used as a means to connect a small group of video game players together to chat and communicate while they're playing an actual video game. that was its core focus. What it has evolved to, especially in sort of Web3 blockchain, is it's become more of a community chat room. And the problem with Discord and how it's being used, I think, frequently today, is that it is distracting you from actually participating in other activities. And so I think about myself as a video game player. If I'm playing a game where I'm pretty much offline, for a few hours, not on my phone, not on a computer, there's like this sort of sense of FOMO that increasingly is itching at me, which is what's going on online, what's going on in Web3, what NFT communities are growing, what game assets should I be buying next? And I'm not thinking about like actually playing the game. And so the whole promise with BoredBox is that we're going to help give people time to play, which is we're going to spend the time to curate all the games that are out there and serve up to you the ones that we think are best. And so if our purpose is to save you time, then at this point, at least, offering someone a Discord, which is potentially going to distract you, is not really on brand, right? So instead of that, we've opted for a very simple Telegram that will provide infrequent updates and will basically get you the information you need when you need it. And then besides that, you don't need to be connected to us. We don't need to be spending 4 hours together in a Discord. And besides that, it's helpful from a security standpoint. There's not lots of links and other people who can kind of control the conversation. And it's less for us to manage as well on our side, so we can spend more time curating games and testing things out and meeting with studios, not trying to squash bots that are infiltrating our Discord.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I really like that, those ideals and those morals, and I wonder how, like, this might be the beginning of a shift, just because Discord is so I guess expected, but I really struggle to just maintain Discord communities, especially with dozens of channels that constantly have new messages. It's I'm the kind of person that's addicted to just making sure that I've read everything, but I've given up on that, and now I have 500 notifications for different channels, and it's yeah, it's not a good feeling. It is something I want to start moving away from.
Yeah, it's a lot of noise, and it also just kind of it incentivizes, or it encourages kind of this mentality of like jumping from one thing to the next, and notifications constantly distracting you, so you can't focus on one thing. And so we just didn't feel like it was necessary. And I do hope that this trend catches on. And to be clear, that isn't to say we'll never use Discord. I think that if we do, it will be much more curated, much like our boxes. And so it might be for, say, members only. So there's not going to be, hundreds of thousands of people in there. It'll be a few thousand who are like owners of board boxes. That's not off the table. But at least for now, during the launch period, we're going to keep it really streamlined.
Yeah, awesome. I'd love to ask you a few more questions about BoredBox. How much do you think it will cost, and when you think the first box will be released? I don't know if it's probably very early, but I'd love to know if there's anything you can share on those.
Yeah, funny enough, we're probably going to release that information in a few days. So I don't mind sharing that with you and your audience. So the board boxes are going to be dropped in increments of 1,000 boxes. We'll probably do several drops throughout the year. This year, we're targeting 3 or 4. And that's a little bit different than the typical drop where there's 10,000 or 20,000 items. It's meant to be something that happens more frequently throughout the year. The price point is going to be 1 ETH. Part of the reason for that is that we're going to have 5 different items in the box, in each box from 5 game studios. So it is a variety pack of a lot of different game items. And also there are going to be items that, we work very closely with studios on to procure, so that they are valuable for players, that they're unique. These are not just kind of everyday over-the-counter game assets. Like we really are going to strive to make sure that we provide value. And that's not value from a monetary standpoint, because again, we're not treating board boxes as like an investment vehicle. It's meant to be almost like a luxury product where you're getting premium items that others might not necessarily be able to get directly from game suppliers. So that's just some of the numbers. Again, back to what I said earlier, you might get 5 game assets and try 5 games out, and some of them might not be a genre of interest to you. And if that's the case, OpenSea is a really good return policy, and you can find somebody who might want to take it off your hands. And so the board box is also going to be an NFT that basically after claim will remain in your wallet. So it will show up as opened or claimed, but having that in your wallet will continue to provide value in 2 key ways at first, but more later. But first of all, it will provide sort of a early access to buy future boxes. So if you're a previous owner, you will get the chance to buy other boxes in the future earlier than the public sale. And then secondly, we really want to work closely with our game suppliers to consistently bring value even after their inclusion in a box. So we might come back 6 months later and do a surprise airdrop of a game asset from one of our past partners to everybody who has a board box in their wallet. So we'll continue to think through other ways to provide value, whether it's virtual or physical events and other surprises. But we definitely see it as basically evolving into a mint pass after you've actually claimed your assets. But what's unique is that you do get something immediately. This isn't like a pass where basically you're promised things that are going to happen in the future. You're getting 5 game items essentially a few days after you buy the box. So you will immediately be able to play games and own something.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting. I haven't even heard of anything like that for Kickstarter, for example, where successful projects are curated and then delivered, because that's that was one of the huge problems with Kickstarter is the promise of products that didn't always come to fruition. So that's really interesting. I wish you the best with that business, and I'm excited to see how it evolves and how the community grows. That's all the time we have. So I really appreciate your time. If anyone listening is interested in following Bored's journey, you can follow him on Twitter at BoredElonMusk, or go to boredbox.io if you want to look into BoredBox, follow the Telegram, and play the Asteroids game on their website if you are wanting to get a bit distracted. And yeah, no, so thank you so much for your time. And if is there anything that you'd like to finish off by saying to the listeners that might be interested in the future of kind of Web3 and where it's going? Any like advice for people maybe looking at developing games in the space? What advice would you give them so that they can navigate the space better?
I think it's important to remember that the most important part of a game is the game mechanics, and are they fun? I'm going to be releasing an article soon, actually, that it's about 4,000 words that describes what makes for a fun blockchain game. But it really is what makes for a fun game. And I think that there's a lot of sort of shiny tools and toys that are available to us in Web3, currencies that are appealing, and all these things that are kind of distractions, and they can make for nice layers and they're interesting tools, but ultimately understanding how to design games is really important. So if nothing else, I highly recommend reading a book called The Art of Game Design by Jesse Schnell. It's a very long and very detailed book that'll probably take someone 2 weeks to read if they're reading a couple hours a day. But start there. Just figure out how to build a game that you would want to play yourself, and then figure out how to layer, blockchain on top of it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll put links to the book on Amazon down below in the description. Thanks for your time, and wish you all the best.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Zero to Play podcast. I hope you learned something about game development, the games industry as a whole, or the future of games. You can follow us on Twitter at Zero to Play, subscribe to us on YouTube or any other podcasting service. And I'll see you guys next week for the next episode.